Mr. Truman's Degree is an 8-page pamphlet published by the author, Elizabeth Anscombe, in 1958 as part of her protest of the University of Oxford's award of an honorary degree to former U.S. President Harry Truman. The pamphlet is short, accessible, and available online. I'll put a link to it in the description below. In the pamphlet, Anscombe makes several historical claims and a series of moral arguments. Among her historical claims is that the key factor in the dropping of the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki was the Allies' demand for unconditional surrender of Japan. She calls this the root of all evil. She considers the objection that she may be called high-minded to criticize, more than a decade later, the end of the war, the decision to drop the bombs. She considers the claims that the bombing was necessary, that it ended the war, and that it saved more lives than it cost. And she says, I will admit this, given the circumstances. But the circumstances include the unjustified demand for unconditional surrender. The demand for unconditional surrender in the European war depended upon not wanting to make any sort of peace with Hitler's government. Anscombe suggests that the government of Japan is not of the same character as Hitler's regime. The circumstances also included a disregard of peace feelers that had been extended to the Soviets in July of 1945, and the issuance of an unconditional surrender ultimatum in the Potsdam Declaration. I think the key fact that Anscombe wishes to put in the foreground is the question of whether or not the Allies' demand for unconditional surrender and their reasoning forward on that basis was justified or unjustified. Anscombe's central moral argument can be put very plainly. She says, choosing to kill the innocent as a means to your end is always murder. And murder is one of the worst human actions. It's one of the worst, morally worst things that humans can do. And these facts can be known by all people. They do not depend upon a treaty or legislation or some abstract or complex moral reasoning. All people know that these things are true. Choosing to kill the innocent as a means is murder, and murder is morally terrible and cannot be justified. She says further, there's no need to give a precise definition of innocent in this case because the obliteration of cities is not a close call. Mr. Truman, she says, certainly chose to kill innocents as a means to an end. She adds there are even some aggravating circumstances, such as that he killed a large number of people all at once with no warning or chance to evacuate. These are factors that did not even obtain during the German aerial bombing of England earlier in the European War. Anscombe addresses several weak arguments that she typically hears about the bombings. One of these is that it's impossible to draw an exact line between the innocent and the guilty in war, between combatants and non-combatants. She calls this an unfunny joke. She says we must draw a line even when it's difficult. We might say especially when it's difficult. This is the stuff of what moral reasoning is about. And furthermore, some things, like the obliteration of cities, are clearly on the wrong side of the line. Wherever you think the borderline cases are, we're not dealing with a borderline case in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. A second weak argument she considers is that conscripts, people drafted and forced to fight for their government, are innocent in a way. But she says here there's a linguistic confusion at the root of this objection. She says innocent means not harming, rather than guiltless. Civilian non-combatants, like enemy prisoners of war, are protected because they are not harming, not because they are not personally responsible. She notes with some concern that General Eisenhower had been said to speak slightingly of the Army's obligation to protect captured prisoners of war. She suggests this misses the point that they're protected not because they are virtuous or that they deserve good treatment. They're protected because they are defenseless. They are in our power and unable to resist us, unable to harm us. A third weak argument Anscombe considers is that her position might be said to entail that we may only attack the enemy with lethal force when the enemy is actively attacking us. Again, she appeals to language to clarify her meaning. She says, what someone is doing refers to their role in a situation, not to their present activity at this moment. So the reason it is okay to attack a sleeping camp of soldiers is because although they are sleeping and not actively harming us at this moment, they are fulfilling the role in their life, what they are doing day to day, of an attacker, of someone who is harming us and therefore is a legitimate target. Anscombe moves on from the weak arguments to note a more serious problem at the heart of moral reasoning about the atomic bombings, that people today, she says, tend to denounce killing rather than murder. So she says, it may be important for me to establish that not all deliberate killing is murder. This is important because to put deliberate killing and murder into the same category, to treat them as morally the same thing, is to invite utter brutality once war is declared, since in war, a certain amount of killing is unavoidable. People might say, once we've crossed the line, we may as well go whole hog. In for a penny, in for a pound, so to speak. We ought to try to get the war over fast by being as brutal as possible. Cases of deliberate killing that are not murder would include the suppression of riots and civil unrest, situations where agents of the state must reassert law with force up to the point of killing sometimes when necessary. So killing in the course of fighting to restore legal order is not murder. She reasons briefly about the death penalty and concludes that the state may put a defenseless criminal to death, but need not do so. However, this is a unique case. The convicted criminal is the only defenseless person that the state may legitimately kill. She writes, "The state can only order to kill others of its subjects, besides convicted criminals, if they are rioting or doing something that has to be stopped and can only be stopped by the servants of the law fighting them. This same right is what grounds the state's right to order its people to fight external enemies who are unjustly attacking." So pacifism is a false doctrine. It's also a pernicious doctrine because it encourages the collapse of murder and killing into one category. Against the war is hell view, she writes, "The correct answer to the statement that war is evil is that it is bad, that is, a misfortune to be at war. But that does not show that it is wrong to fight, or that if one does fight, one can also commit murder." Anscombe concludes the pamphlet with an attack on modern moral philosophy. Specifically, she says, modern moral philosophies seem to contain a repudiation of the idea that any class of actions, such as murder, may be absolutely excluded. That's my brief summary and commentary on Elizabeth Anscombe's pamphlet, Mr. Truman's Degree. I'd encourage you to read it for yourself. I hope you found this helpful. Thanks for watching today. Goodbye.